everybody. I hope that you're all doing well. Welcome to today's video. I'm finally bringing you part 2 of the Karen Widdoss true crime video. I don't even want to dwell on it too much. This was not meant to be split up into 2 parts. My part 1, the whole thing didn't export. And it's my fault for not checking it after I edited it and everything. And then I typically will delete my footage once it's uploaded on YouTube because I don't have a hard drive. So half the video is missing and I deleted all the raw footage. So here we are filming part 2. Totally my fault. Sorry. Thank you guys for being so patient with me. And let's just jump into it. If you have not seen part 1, I will link it down below, and I would go watch that first because you're not going to have any idea what I'm talking about if you're only watching this video. So go watch that one and then come back here. So without further ado, let's just jump into it because I know you guys have been waiting for a while. So we left off with Karen coming to and regaining consciousness after her ex-boyfriend choked her and she passed out. So when she regained consciousness, when she came to, she was laying on the floor of her sister's bedroom. She saw that he had changed her out of her clothes that she had been wearing, and she was now wearing a dress. Her chest was covered in blood. She felt that she had been beaten, and basically what he was doing, as I started to tell you in the first video, is that he would beat her until she passed out, and then she would wake up and it would happen again. So she went through a lot. I think I didn't write it down, but I think I read that the whole thing took an hour, lasted an hour. She was coming in and out of consciousness and being abused by this guy. So when she came to, she looked over and he was kneeling next to her on the floor, and he had a 14-inch butcher knife that he raised up above his head, and he stabbed her in the chest with it. And I have a quote here from her, because again, I took all my notes from an interview that she had with a reporter. Her name is in the first video, I forget it, but she said, "It was like he was prying my ribs open, and he was hissing and making awful grunting sounds. I remember thinking, I am never going to see the sun again." And keep in mind, her mom wasn't home, so she was home by herself, and she just remembered thinking, I just want to see my mom again before I die. So he took the knife that he had stabbed her with, wrapped it in a towel, and threw it under the bed. And then he kissed her on the lips and told her he loved her. He then took her and shoved her under her sister's bed, covered her with sheets, and basically just left her there, just walked out of the room and left her to die, essentially. But Karen was still very much conscious. Unfortunately, because she had to feel all that, but fortunately because she was still there enough where she could get up and, survive. So what she did, essentially, because she thought he had left the house already, so she basically grabbed her chest with her hand, I guess to hold it together, or so maybe she thought, and she scooted out from under the bed, staggered all the way to her own bedroom, because she was in her sister's bedroom, made her way to her bedroom and called 911. The dispatcher asked, what is your emergency? And she just said, I'm being murdered. says in that moment, like as that was all happening, she felt herself dying. I mean, she had been stabbed very far into her chest. She actually didn't know it at the time. She would find out later at the hospital that the knife had actually gone an inch into her heart, into the organ. So she had been very, very, very badly and deeply stabbed. But she remembers just telling herself, he's not gonna kill me. He is not gonna win. She didn't want to let him win. So again, she found the strength to get up. She staggered out of her house. Mind you, she's bloody. She's like half naked. But she makes her way out of her house and walks down the block to her grandparents' house. Again, thank God that they lived so close. She gets to their house. She stumbles her way up the stairs, goes into the house, and her grandparents see her, and of course they're gonna freak out. They jump up, and she walks to her grandpa, and she just like collapses in his arms, and he just like, he holds her. Meanwhile, while this is happening and she's, making her way in the house, their neighbor across the street, very luckily, was a police officer, and he saw this happening. He saw her like coming down the street and going up in the house. His name was Jim Goodchild, which is very ironic that his last name is Goodchild because he played a very, very good role here in this story. So his main concern was, of course, to, get her an ambulance and all that. But his other main concern was to find Leonard, because this had obviously just happened. So in his mind, he's like, he knows that he couldn't have gone that far yet. So poor Karen, she's like suffering, waiting for the ambulance. The ambulance gets there, but she still, again, by some miracle, has enough strength to be able to tell the officer what happened. She gave them a description of Leonard as well as where he might be, and she told them that he may be at the 𝓢𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪, not sure, 𝓢𝓸𝓬𝓲𝓪 bridge, which is where he told her that he was going to go kill himself and jump off the bridge. Sure enough, while she goes to the hospital, the officers make their way towards the bridge, and they find him there, me standing on the bridge getting ready to jump, and he has a photo in his hand. The photo they took into custody, because they were able to, not into custody, but they took the photo in the cops' possession, and they were able to grab him off the bridge before he jumped, and they kept the photo, and they later showed it to Karen, and they asked her, do you know who this is? It was a photo of a girl, and they said, sorry, that's my throat, they said, do you know who this is? And she said, yeah, that's me. She had been beaten so badly that they couldn't recognize who was in the photo. It was her. So he was carrying a photo of her as he was getting ready to jump. So, of course, they took him into custody before he was able to jump. Meanwhile, at the hospital, doctors had very, very little hope that Karen would make it through the night. They had her stabilized, but even once she was stabilized, they didn't think she was going to make it through the night. They invited her family into her room to say their goodbyes. There were officers basically waiting around for the time of death. They had no hope that she was going to make it, but this girl obviously was ridiculously strong for many reasons, and she made it through the night. But I'm assuming it was the next day, once she had made it through the night, she learned something else that Leonard had done, and I remember reading about this part, and she was the last person to know about this. Her family had been told, of course the doctors knew, but Leonard had actually sexually assaulted her very badly as well, and she was obviously, devastated by this news. She hated that she was the last one to know, but in the doctor's defense, when she was a minor, so of course they're going to tell the parents, and two, they didn't think she was going to make it through the night, so the next day. But you know, on top of everything that he did to her, you know, beat her, whatever, add that on top of it, and she was devastated. But anyway, and actually, interestingly enough, prosecutors who were like, you know, working with this case and authorities and all that, they had said that they had seen victims of homicide cases, people that have lost their lives, endure less than Karen did, and Karen survived. So that just goes to show you how badly she was treated and how severe the torture was that she was subjected to, even for just that 1 hour. So at the court hearing, Karen had to, you know, stand up, give her testimony, poor thing, you know, in front of Leonard with him there. And actually, once she was finished speaking, she made the mistake of looking at him, which, I mean, I guess that would be hard to do. If it were me, I would try very hard to not look at him at all. She looked at him, and he mouthed the words, "I love you," to her. Can you imagine? And she told the judge that he had done that, and the judge just told her to just ignore it. He was already in enough trouble, you know, just ignore it. He can't hurt you, you know, that kind of thing. Anyway, this part always makes me really mad. So Leonard's bail was set, and actually the district attorney wanted to raise his bail to make sure like he couldn't get out, and others, I don't really know like what the positions are when it comes to the law and all that, so I don't want to say it wrong, but basically they decided to not raise his bail with the mentality of, oh, he can't afford it anyway. He made bail, long story short, and he was released. And poor Karen wasn't even notified that he was released. She realized it one day when she went to the mailbox and had a letter from him. That was how she found out that he had been released, which, can you freaking imagine? That's so traumatizing. And you know, the letter was like an apology, and it was like, how could I have done this to you? You're the only girl that I've ever loved. I'm so sorry. Like, that kind of letter. And Karen and her mom remember thinking, like, he thought that he was like above the law. He skipped his bail hearing, and then was arrested shortly after. And once he was arrested, he pleaded guilty to felony charges, including aggravated assault and rape. And notice how that doesn't say attempted murder. It's attempted or aggravated assault instead of attempted murder. And Karen remembers being very, very upset about that, because she said he very clearly tried to kill me. And I agree with her. So she said right away, you know, that was when she started to feel like the system was failing her. So anyway, so those were his charges. From jail, he continued to harass her. I guess he remembered her number after he had got it back, the new one, and he called her on her birthday, and she remembers she answered the phone, and he immediately said, "Don't hang up." And you know, he called to wish her a happy birthday. He told her, you know, prison isn't what I expected it to be. He called it more of a rest home, so he clearly wasn't suffering too much. And she remembers, like, just like as she was listening to his voice, like, she just fell to her knees and just like started screaming, and she's traumatized, poor girl. That's absolutely horrible. So anyway, the system fails even more, in my opinion. So Leonard's plea deal got him 15 to 40 years in jail, which means that after 15 years, after he serves the 15 years, which he has, he's eligible for parole every year. So every year, Karen has to fight to keep him in jail. After everything that he did, he's eligible to be released once a year, which I think is ridiculous. So she says, every year she's forced to relive her nightmare, go in and tell her story and all that. But she has successfully kept him in jail, and so now this is where I'm going to start to read a little more, because I want to make sure that I get all the information right. So she began fighting to get legislation called Karen's Law, which I tried to read a lot about and do some research. So Karen's Law would basically make it impossible for sexual predators to be able to even apply for parole. Because Karen and her family know, they feel in their hearts that if he ever were to be released, he would find her and he would finish the job. They both say that. The mom says that, Karen says that, and honestly that seems pretty likely to me as well. If after everything, he still has that obsession with her, even after all this time. So again, like, I was doing research on this Karen's Law, and it's not passed everywhere yet, but it is making its way through the political world. She's like devoted her life to this, and I don't know, I think it's a good thing, because can you imagine someone does all that to you, and every year you have to go through that and have to be terrified of the fact that he may, be able to go home. It's terrifying, and like no way to live your life. Like, it really, anyway, you get it. So she's fighting for that. I forget, so I did this research like 2 weeks ago now at this point, so I forget what states it's been successful, but I know it has been successful in a few places. And Karen says, until it is passed everywhere, she will continue to fight for it. Even to this day, Leonard continues to write her letters from jail. Well, I guess I can't say until this day, because this article is from 2 years ago. I don't know. But up until this point where she had this interview, he would write her letters from jail, professing his love for her. He also talks about how he may end his life. He includes like little pictures of skulls on his letters, just like really creepy stuff. So she vows that she will continue to work every day of her life to keep Leonard and, people like him locked up in jail where they belong. And that, my friends, is the story of Karen Widdoss. I hope I'm saying her name right. It's either Widdoss or Widdoss. I'm not sure, but I think that she is incredibly strong, and I can't even imagine like going through all that and like being okay. I know she's married. I don't know if she has kids, just because I didn't look into it, so I don't know. She could very well have kids. But and even like her mom having to see her kid go through that, the grandparents who, saw her walking up into their house half naked and bloody, just like all of it, it's just so anyway, again, I truly apologize that this all was like a mess and that it was broken up into 2 parts. When I first saw, you guys start to comment like, it gets cut off, my heart sank, and I went and I looked at the end of the video and I saw that it cut off like literally halfway through. There was so much information missing. And then I saw that I didn't have any of the footage, and I was so upset. I was so upset. So lesson learned for me, I will always check my videos before I even go to upload them. vacation with my friends the past couple of days, and so I wasn't able to film because I wasn't home. So it was